I guess we can get started. If you have not signed in, here is the QR code or link or whatever. Sign in, and we in our desperate need of attendance.
There's no need to advertise how desperate we are, but
Alright, guess I'll get started. Yeah, not that. Announcements. We have... Juwan, do you want to do this?
So we are accepting officer applications right now. It is due by the end of this week. So, and we'll be sending out some time for interview, either probably the Sunday night or Saturday or Monday. So please apply if you're interested. And we do have a CTF for UTD CSG. It's supposed to be beginner friendly, so it will start at 3. And if you're really new and want to kind of see the walkthrough of some challenges of CTF, Henry will be doing a CTF walkthrough at 12 at noon this Friday. And it'll be on Discord just like this. I think that's it. Oh, and the QR code.
Is this for, what's the QR code for? Alright. Well, today I'm going to be going over OpenWRT, and let me move my mic, hold on. And why you should use it. Start off, it's free, open source. I should probably explain what OpenWRT is. OpenWRT is basically an OS. It's like a Linux distro that's designed to run on basically routers of all kinds. Anything that has a Wi-Fi or Bluetooth radio in it, it's a good chance you can get OpenWRT running on it. So OpenWRT, it's free, open source, it's Linux based, everything that you're familiar with, hopefully, and if not, you should become familiar with it. This is a great way to start. And like I said, it'll run on basically anything. A lot of router hardware is super specialized. There's a lot of, I think a good 60% of routers run MIPS architecture, which basically nothing else uses anymore. But yeah, you can basically build it for pretty much any computer you own. And then it's just got a stupid amount of features. I think I have this open. Here is just a bunch of user guides for OpenWRT stuff. And it goes across basically anything you can think of network related. There's probably some way to do it with OpenWRT. And of course, it's secure, which is why we're all here. Secure mainly because OEM router firmware doesn't get updated all that much, and you know, if the same firmware is running on every device, then vulnerabilities are usually discovered a lot quicker and patched a lot quicker. So just generally a little bit better. So how are you going to get OpenWRT to play around with? Well, if you have an old router sitting around, a lot of, especially the older stuff, has a lot of just readily available support. Here, if you go on the OpenWRT wiki, it has a list of basically every company that manufactures networking gear and which routers are supported and how they're supported. But originally, OpenWRT, the reason it's called that is because it was built for this router right here, the WT54, I believe. But yeah, now it runs on pretty much anything. If you don't have a cheap old router that you can flash it on, then you can do kind of what I did and buy something like this. This is a $20 router you can buy off Amazon that runs OpenWRT stock and has just a crap ton of features for, and it runs, best part is it runs off USB power. So we'll get into it later, but it's really useful. And then, if barring all that, if you want a challenge, you want to learn a lot about Linux, you can build it for whatever device you own. I don't guarantee that it'll be a fun experience, but you know, you can do it. So why do you want to use OpenWRT instead of just whatever your router came with? It has a crap ton of features, especially high-end features that you would find in a lot of more advanced like enterprise networking gear. Most basic stuff, you can set up VPNs. It has a lot of support for OpenVPN and what is it, WireGuard out of the box, but a lot of different VPN services will run on OpenWRT. As well as you can set up file share, Samba, FTP, anything that your network, whatever OS you're running on most of your computers, you can probably get something compatible and make use of those little USB ports that are on a lot of the back of your routers. Just hook up an external hard drive and just keep your photos or some random backup on it. You can run services like DDNS directly on your router. If you've ever set up a website, you've probably messed with DDNS. It's always a pain. If you just want to get your one top level domain to point to a bunch of different servers on your network, then running DDNS directly on your router is one of the best ways to do it, because then you just have to set it up once and point it at whatever device you need. You can also do DNS hijacking. DNS hijacking is fun. Anytime you log into a hotel Wi-Fi or Starbucks Wi-Fi or something, and you get that page, that's because the router is doing DNS hijacking and just pointing you towards that page. Something that's really become really popular lately is Pi-holes, which is just a piece of software that you run on a Raspberry Pi that does a bunch of ad blocking. That actually originated from OpenWRT. So this is literally all it takes to set that up on an OpenWRT router. It's super easy to automate. Everything's a text file. It's all Linux. Everything's a file. You can run scripts to do basically everything on OpenWRT. Everything that's in the front end is just an automation of some back-end text editing. And then you have normal Linux stuff like SSH, so if you break something or you're remote and you need to fix your parents' Wi-Fi, then it's good to have around. And then past all that, even if you don't know a lot about Linux, there's some nice web front ends. This is what they plan on transitioning to later, but I have some screenshots of the current front end. They're both pretty similar. Another big appeal of OpenWRT is you can do a crap ton of monitoring with it. There's pretty much as much as you can think of. There's systemd services. If you're familiar with Linux, you probably know systemd runs a lot of like the very essential things. There's collectd and bandwidthd. This is a screenshot of bandwidthd serving graphs. But collectd just takes all the network traffic that's coming in and out of your device and shoves it in whatever kind of database you can think of. So you can integrate that with pretty much anything, any piece of software you write, any piece of software that does, graphing or statistics. You can usually integrate with collectd just because it's such a low-level device. You can also do the same thing with packet sniffing. There's another piece of software called darkstat, which just sniffs all the packets, and you can do stuff like deep packet inspection and figure out exactly what kind of network traffic is coming in and out of your device, not just where it's going, but what services it's providing to, even if it's masked as something else. And then, of course, with this super low level and Linux integration, you can do a lot of really crazy fun stuff. So I found a guide that someone was using collectd to shove everything in an influx database, and using Prometheus and Grafana, which are both super like new data science display things that came up with this little network monitoring front end. And it's just complete overkill, but you know, that's fun, and that's why we're doing this. If you guys have any questions, feel free to jump in at any point. So it's hard to talk about OpenWRT in its own vacuum because there is this scary thing called pfSense, which is actually amazing. So pfSense is used in a lot of enterprise networking. It's also open source. It's based off FreeBSD, so not Linux, but close enough. It's targeted at much higher throughput. It only really... So the reason that I don't really recommend pfSense for people who are just getting into stuff is it'll only work on... I believe it'll only work on x86 based computers, so like full like normal desktop computers. And that means that you can get a stupid amount of power out of it, but you're not going to be able to run it on your current router because your current router is most likely not x86 based. Another thing about OpenWRT over pfSense is that you have the ability to actually use all the built-in wireless radios. So if you don't have a bunch of standalone access points, then pfSense isn't going to be that useful for you because it really is only designed to use wired Ethernet adapters. But if you're serious about networking, I definitely recommend looking into pfSense. Like I said, a lot of enterprise stuff uses it, and it's all free. So if you have an old computer laying around and you can throw a network card in it, then definitely look into it. So what do you do now? Now that you've gone down the route of OpenWRT and you've maybe looked into pfSense or changed over to pfSense, and you still have a bunch of old networking gear, well, you can use it for all kinds of other stuff. I don't actually use OpenWRT for my main Wi-Fi setup, but I use it all the time for other testing and development stuff. If I ever want to throw up a open network that's very scary and insecure, then I can just set it up as a guest device on my main network, and not let any of that traffic interfere. And then I can take that with me. So like I said earlier, how hard is it to get back here? There's this little router that I have that cost me $20, and it can run off a USB power bank. So I use that all the time when I'm traveling or going to hackathons or whatever, as just a super simple, insecure, fun to easy to get working network. And I have to do all the configuration. Let's say if I have a hotel Wi-Fi and I want to be able to use something like a Chromecast. Chromecast, if you're not familiar with it, basically you interact with it over your network, and then but it has to be connected to the internet. So it's just an IoT device, but it's very useful to have when traveling. So I'll connect it to my little OpenWRT router, and then I'll connect the OpenWRT router to the hotel Wi-Fi. I can even set up a VPN. So you have a lot of options in how you connect it. Just because all the software is open, you can plug and play all these different devices in different directions. So you can do like wireless WAN. Basically, you're just taking Wi-Fi and then just using it to run your own network off of. Or you can do tethering to your phone, like a USB connection to use your cellular data. You can do a lot of more advanced stuff like MAC spoofing. So let's say whenever you log into your hotel Wi-Fi and you like accept the terms and conditions, or maybe you even have to pay for something, and they like give you a device limit, for example, what you can do is just log into that hotel Wi-Fi, and then whatever device you logged in on, for example your phone, you connect to your router, and then you just tell your router to max spoof whatever your phone was using, and then to the network it'll show up as your phone, and you'll be able to get away with using the Wi-Fi with basically as many devices as you want. You guys still following? All right. You can also take those old routers and turn them into something useful. Let's say you set up your pfSense thing. pfSense doesn't do Wi-Fi. You still want to do Wi-Fi, and you have a perfectly capable device. What you can do is just turn it into a dumb access point. You turn off all the firewall, all the routing stuff, and you just say broadcast Wi-Fi with this network. And you can do that and have a super powerful device that's just, you don't have to buy another device because of that. You can also use it for things like extending your Wi-Fi range, like basically a repeater. It'll receive your Wi-Fi signal and then rebroadcast it with a stronger signal, basically. Or something like a managed switch, which are usually pretty expensive, but again, if you already have the hardware, it's a pretty good idea. Yeah, but also OpenWRT can be useful for offensive stuff, especially with this super portable router that I have. You can just throw it in a backpack, and for example, you can set the SSID to be whatever Starbucks Wi-Fi is, or Comcast Wi-Fi, or AT&T Wi-Fi, or whatever these open access points that a lot of times you'll find just out in like shopping centers and stuff. People will connect to those with their phones, and now all of a sudden they're vulnerable. So it's good to it's always fun to set up your little wireless thing with one of those SSIDs and just see how many devices connect to it. Because a lot of times, just people will auto connect to networks and not realize, and you can sniff a lot of data that way. It's just like the classic man-in-the-middle attack, but again, you can do this in a little portable device just as you go about your day. Another fun thing to do with OpenWRT is what's called a rogue access point. Basically, what that is an access point, one that, let's say you physically break into a building and there's an Ethernet jack in the wall of some office or presentation room. If you plug in an access point there, like Ethernet doesn't usually have, a lot of times Ethernet doesn't have any kind of security set up unless they have something like Active Directory or whatever set up. So you can just plug in an access point to that Ethernet jack, and now all of a sudden you're broadcasting their network publicly. Or if you were trying to do it more discreetly, you could set your router to not broadcast SSID, and then you could just connect wirelessly to that access point. Another way that rogue access points are used a lot is they'll connect to a network, and then they'll duplicate all the radio information that other access points are using. So, most offices will have a bunch of access points mesh networked together, all using the same thing, so that as you walk through the building, your device can connect to different access points to maintain a strong signal. If you just slot your own access point in there, running your own firmware that has the same credentials as all the other access points, then devices will a lot of times just connect to that, and now all of a sudden you can sniff all those packets. You can redirect their DNS. You can do all kinds of fun stuff without the user ever really knowing or noticing any kind of service interruption. And then one of the other great ways to use it is as a Dropbox. If you're doing, again, like you're physically infiltrating a building, you can just plug into the Ethernet and use that OpenWRT device as a Dropbox, so that you can get remote access back into a network. The reason that you'd want to use OpenWRT over some kind of other Linux box is you can disguise it as some network device. If it's outputting a Wi-Fi signal and it looks like a router, then a lot of times, or an access point, especially if it matches all the other ones, people won't suspect it as much as if they just see a little black box plugged into a network switch. That might seem a little more suspicious. Yeah. This is Mini Poner. This is basically exactly that. Has a bunch of Wi-Fi and network analyzing tools built into it. So if you're doing something like that, this is designed to work specifically with OpenWRT. But yeah, that's what I have for right now. Any questions?